Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for YouTOONS. Welcome back. My name is John, and I'm here with my co-host, as usual, Mr. Kody Smith.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us again. A little early this time, but I think it's going to be worth it for sure.
Absolutely. This is a subject that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think it's very near and dear to a lot of people our age. If you're of the age, I want to say, maybe 25 to 35, maybe even 40, you're going to know and love the person that we're talking about tonight. And tonight we're talking about the entire world of Don Bluth. So, Kody, why did we choose Don Bluth?
Well, one of the things that we wanted to do is we wanted to alternate between doing movies and doing like like television animation. So this kind of does help with our flip-flopping back and forth. But the big thing for me at least is, a lot of these movies were kind of around. Like I had a lot of these VHSs when I was a little kid, growing up through elementary school, in the early 90s. So it's and I know these movies are important to you too. We've had some chats offline about it, but these are definitely like just important films for the preservation of hand-drawn animation and just kind of that classic sort of Disney style without being Disney.
Absolutely. Well, and he cut his teeth basically as a Disney animator, and he is responsible for a lot of those early, favorites, those classics like Fox and the Hound, which I'm sure we'll talk about, and Pete's Dragon. So Don Bluth is someone, and he's still alive today. That was something that I felt kind of embarrassed about. That I didn't realize that he's still alive and kicking today, just kind of hanging out in Arizona. But he's done things. I think his last big feature was probably Titan AE, if I am remembering this correctly, in the early 2000s.
Yes, so that came out in 2000, and we'll get to Titan AE. That's definitely a very ambitious thing. He's actually working on something currently, which is super.
Oh,
So we'll definitely talk about it, but we got to start at the beginning.
absolutely.
All right, so Don Bluth was born September 13th, 1937, in El Paso, Texas, and he did a little bit of moving and stuff like that. But the biggest thing that kind of got him into animation was he was at around between 4 and 6. He went and saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs in theaters, and that's what decided. That's what made him. Oh, we didn't talk about our special guests.
That's true. Look at me. I am beside myself. I have a holdover special guest. I am drinking more of the Bodhisattva, kind of finishing off this six pack that I have going on here. These things are very dangerous. It's a 6.9 percenter. It's like the most delicious IPA. If you live in the Seattle area, I definitely suggest grabbing a Bodhisattva. It's one of those that if you live around the area, when I moved up here last year, everyone's just like, you have to drink Mac and Jack or Bodhisattva. And I've kind of told this story before. Mac and Jack is so boring, but Bodhisattva it's just delicious. It's just a perfectly balanced IPA. Do you have a special guest, Kody?
I do. I don't know. I've never tried this before. This is something I picked up from the shop today. It's called Fistful of Bourbon.
Nice. That's
And
awesome.
it has such a sweet label, and like it's inlaid in the glass too. It just says Fistful of Bourbon. It's a blend of 5 straight bourbon whiskeys, and it's a 90 proof whiskey. So I've never tried it.
Oh my God. See, I pride myself, this is a little bit in, behind the curtain of John's life. I pride myself on knowing my spirits and my wines and my beer. In real life, that's my profession to know these things. I have never heard or seen that bottle before, but it looks enticing, sir.
Yeah, it just like it's got like a nice white blue, very attractive bottle. It's just it has a very satisfying cork noise. Let me
Oh, that is
like
satisfying.
we just did a little bit of ASMR for you.
We didn't
But
know it was going to be that kind of show tonight.
yeah, we're turning things around. But yeah, like I saw it and I was like, hey, I'll give that a shot.
Absolutely.
All
Oh
right,
man.
so between age of 4 and 6, Don sees Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, and he decides he wants to commit his life to animation. And so that's where we got him kind of just drawing all the time. In 1954, he moved to California, and he was in high school and just mailed a packet of his work to Disney, and they were like, "Hey, come on over." And so he was an assistant animator on Sleeping Beauty. Was the first movie he ever worked on.
Jeez.
No art school, just send in his stuff to Disney.
Can you imagine something like that? Well, I guess it kind of happens now, and kind of in the space that we're doing. You never know. You send out, like, we're all on social media, right? We're on Twitter and stuff. It's just like, hey, you want to be on my podcast, or you want to do this thing? Sometimes the big fish says yes. So I mean, good for him. That's kind of the early iteration of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, and obviously, technology has kind of changed how content creation works now, and obviously, just obviously, if I were to send a packet of drawings to Disney now, I'm sure that it wouldn't even get opened. But I mean, it wouldn't need to get opened. There'd be bad drawings, but it's the point still stands. Like that things change, and it's just kind of interesting. Just like he just was just like, oh, I'll just send these in and see what they say. So he left Disney. He went on a Mormon mission to Argentina for 2.5 years. He came back, went to Brigham Young University for a degree in English Lit, but worked on a bunch of Disney movies during the summer at this time. He went to work for Filmation and when he also one of the other things he did when he came back is he opened the Bluth Brothers Theater, which was a live action theater. He then went to college, so I got those two out of order. I apologize. He went to work again as an artist in 1967 for Filmation, which is I'm sure we'll cover at some point. They've done things like Archie, Fat Albert, He-Man, a lot of 80s cartoons, basically. The sort of cartoons that we talked about where it's basically advertisements for toys. It's not a cartoon for the cartoon's sake. It's a cartoon because they're selling something. So in 1971, he went back to Disney, and this is where we kind of know him for his really, good early work. So things like Robin Hood, The Rescuers, Winnie the Pooh and Tigger 2, we already talked about Sleeping Beauty, Pete's Dragon, you had mentioned earlier. These are all great Disney movies.
And he was the lead animator on these. And if you think about those old style Disney films, they had a very pronounced kind of animation style to them. And when he left Disney and he started kind of making his own, he started becoming a filmmaker on his own. It's just like, oh wow, that there's a reason why these all still look like Disney movies, because these Disney movies kind of he brought that style to these films that you didn't even know that he was a part of. Everyone's seen American Tale or Secret of NIMH, but those, if you kind of turn your brain off and you think about it, it's like you're watching the same animation style that he brought to The Fox and the Hound and everything. So it's just I feel like is it fair to say that Don Bluth is underrated, or like has, as far as like Disney goes?
Yeah, well, so that's kind of one of the things that caused him and a few other people to leave Disney. He was working on, when he saw Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and worked on Sleeping Beauty, like that was like the first heyday of Disney feature length animation. And so, like, actually, there's an interview that I watched of him on a podcast, actually, where he said that they were talking about, oh, well, it's too expensive to do things the way we used to do it. And the example that he gave was in The Rescuers. If you look at Bernard's eyes, they're not colored in white. They're colored in the rest of the color of his skin.
Right.
And they told him, we can't color them in white because it costs too much. And he said, that's not an excuse to make bad animation. Like, it looks objectively bad. And now that you know it, the next time you go watch Rescuers, it's going to bother you.
Well, and that's the thing too, rewatching a lot of these films, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, not, watching like Thumbelina and watching like Rock-a-Doodle. And sometimes the animation isn't necessarily the best, but the movements are so lifelike and everything's hand drawn. There's very little CG. I mean, this was at the, way before like the integration of CG, but kind of during too. Once those later films kind of came out in the 90s, they were doing that with Aladdin and everything, and even the beginning, the opening sequence of Thumbelina, when they're doing the kind of establishing shot through Paris, you could see, they were using CG. But like I said, I was like watching like even American Tale, where you have mice and cats and everything, and those kind of fantastical creatures talking, but they move so lifelike. Like Disney animation even back then is just immaculate looking. It looks like there's no flaws at all, but it has that whimsical cartoon feeling. When you're watching Thumbelina, it's like these you could almost like put a person, like mocap a person on there, and it looks like they would be moving in the same realistic way. But like I said, the animation isn't always the cleanest. Like you could almost see pencil marks sometimes when I was rewatching these. I'm like, wow, it looks kind of messy, but it's just so more realistic than watching any other kind of style of animation of its time.
Yeah, and actually, I was going to comment on that. That's kind of one of my favorite parts about Don Bluth's work is that, like, when you're watching it, it's like you can tell this is hand drawn. There's
Yes.
no other way that this could have been made, and you just see the heavy, the heavy hand with the pencil, and like you said, even though you see those pencil lines, it doesn't not look fluid.
Right.
Like it looks like somebody moving, and just the level of detail that's needed to do that sort of thing is just insane. So we're going to be talking about actually. So going into him leaving, he actually left during the production of Fox and the Hound. So he was only involved in the very early. Both him and two other guys, Gary
Goldman, right?
Gary Goldman and John Pomeroy. They had started working on a movie called Banjo the Woodpile Cat, and they started working on their own. And they brought it to let's see here, Don Miller, who was a high-ranking person at Disney at the time, and basically they said, "This doesn't work for us. This isn't going to work. We can't do this." So on September 13th, 1979, he started Don Bluth Productions with 17 other Disney animators. They were all called the Disney Defectors.
And this was right around the time when A Little One came out as well, right? I think that came out in 77 or 78.
Yeah, so that was kind of the last thing he did. It's a Christmas special about the nativity scene and a Christmas special basically, and so basically it took them 4 years to put together this animated short. So it's about 28 minutes long. Banjo the Woodpile Cat. So I've got one scene here, the same as we did last time. We're gonna figure out how we can do some sort of video thing for you guys in the future. But just for now, we're going to do little scenes here. So the plot of Banjo the Woodpile Cat, which actually had, let's see here, it had Scatman Crothers as Crazy Legs,
as he was known to do.
Yeah, as he was known to be.
Sure.
And this was released on the 1st of May, 1982. It was just a short. It was re-released in 2009 as a DVD. But the story is basically this cat who lives outside in a farm in Utah, gets bored with his life. He wants to go to Salt Lake City. Shenanigans ensue, and then he wants to come back. It's like I said, it's a short watch, so you can watch it and get through it real quick. But I just wanted to
see some of his LDS influences coming out in that one.
Yeah, well, it's about, because he lived in a farm outside of Salt Lake City, so it's kind of similar to how his life was, and there's some I didn't hear any confirmation about this, but that he had a cat that lived in a woodpile, and one day it was gone, and then one day it came back, and this is just kind of like a story he made up about the cat that left. So I've got a clip here of Banjo the Woodpile Cat. He's trying to get aboard a truck that's headed towards Salt Lake City, and I just love the voices in this. So just listen. You won't hear Banjo talk, but you'll hear some people talking, and it's awesome. So this is the truck approaching.
So where are you headed for, Freeman?
Oh, I'm headed for Salt Lake.
Salt Lake? Big city like that? You must see some good times.
Good times? I'll say good times. And the only way to know is to go where the good times are.
Yeah, it's just very, you could tell it's like at the beginning of any TV show. People deliver their lines a little bit more stiffly. There is emotion there, but you could kind of feel that it's maybe just like hitting a ceiling that they just can't quite break through. And obviously this was done in this was done in Don Bluth's garage, so it's not like something that he had access to all these crazy professional sound booths or anything like that. But like it looks pretty well. It's animated very well.
I would say his sound design is something that I would point out that is very strong, because it may have been because he had to do it on kind of a lower budget, so he probably used more actual things.
You got new time.
Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I think he was using like actual things. So like when you hear one of the owls crunching on a bug in Secret of NIMH, it really sounds like someone's eating something like right up to the mic, and sometimes that kind of you get a richer sound out of a lower budget when you have to do actual things.
It definitely adds to the like when you have good Foley work. Basically, it's people. I mean, obviously, if you've ever seen any sort of like behind the scenes of like even movies like Toy Story, when they're making noises, if you watch them making noises, it's people doing things to make it sound like they're doing the thing they're doing on TV.
Well, at least it used to be, right? Like now it's just everything's on soundboards and you have everything at the handy. But back then, you're right. It's like people are actually doing these motions, and that's where you get the more tactile feel of these hand-drawn Don Bluth cartoons. It's not only what you're seeing and how they move and how they talk and the kind of more adult heady themes, but it's also the sound and the color. Everything is just way more grounded, and that's why I think they connected so much more with at least myself, but millions of people back then.
Yeah, and it really gave it like an earthy feel. Like a lot of Don's movies are kind of darker.
Yeah.
And so not in a bad way, but they're just like they're kind of dark and they feel a little gravelly, and that's what I like about them. But and a lot of these movies are a little bit darker than Banjo the Woodpile Cat.
Well, you don't say.
Yeah. So, we're actually going to go into one of your favorites.
Okay.
The Secret of NIMH.
Oh, geez. Oh, Secret of NIMH. Where do we start, man? Well, do you have the rundown of it?
I've got some facts based off the book Miss Frisbee and the Rats of NIMH by Robert C. O'Brien. Bluth, Goldman, and Pomeroy had to mortgage their homes to increase their budget from $5 million to $6.1 million for the film. So they had $6.1 million to make this whole film, and they had to make it in 30 months.
Wow.
So this is going to be a recurring theme of pretty much all of Don Bluth's movies is he doesn't have enough money and he doesn't have enough time. And so this was made by Don Bluth Productions and Aurora Productions. This had Elizabeth Hartman as Miss Brisbane, Hermione Bradley as Auntie Shrew, Shannon Doherty as Teresa, and Will Wheaton as Martin.
Oh my God, that's true. Oh my God.
It was released on 16th of July, 1982, and it was released against E.T., Jim Henson's The Dark Crystal, and Disney's Tron.
Wow, what a stacked year, right?
Yeah.
Jesus. But how telling, like, this was, it is very like Dark Crystal-esque, because at the time, especially coming from what he was doing at Disney, and now here's this giant dark fantasy movie, because Secret of NIMH is a heady, deep, rich film, and it's high fantasy at its but don't let the cute little mouse wearing a petticoat fool you. This film is terrifying. It has some really adult theatrical moments. I don't think it was it rated G? Back then the rating system was so crazy.
I think it was G, but it was definitely marketed towards kids. And actually that's kind of one of the things that, when Disney looked at it to possibly buy it, they were like, this is too dark. We can't be doing this. This is the 80s, we can't.
Right.
Yeah, we can't do Sleeping Beauty again. That's not how things are. And it is very dark. So I highly recommend. This is kind of widely held as I think even Don Bluth likes this the best out of all of his movies. So definitely a great movie. I've got a clip here. So they also had to change Mrs. Frisbee to Mrs. Frisbee because of copyright with the Whammo making the actual Frisbee. So this is a scene of Mrs. Brisby, and I forgot the name of the cat that helps, or the bird that helps her. Off the top of my head. It's played by Dom DeLuise.
Which is a frequent collaborator. Well, yeah, we'll talk about him in these.
Yeah. He's basically in every Don Bluth movie. So this is them getting away from a scary cat.
Admit it, you were scared. Oh, fiddlestick. Hold still. If I had actually been near a cat, I'd be sneezing my brains out. See, I'm allergic to cat. I'm allergic to hay. I'm allergic to Hound.
He sneezes into the cat's face.
And that's a house cat making that noise.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, like these cats are animated.
Sure.
And
they're terrifying. They are monsters.
They're definitely monsters for sure.
Becky in the chat is screaming Jeremy the Crow. Yes, his name is Jeremy.
We appreciate it. Yeah. Ignore our ignorance.
but I mean, that's the thing. So let me ask you this: like, do you think that if the characters were replaced with humans, they wouldn't it wouldn't have been as palatable for the general audience? And I think that, and this is my personal opinion, I think that maybe a lot of these films would have gotten the Black Cauldron kind of treatment, that, oh, we don't want our family movie or family animated movies to be this dark. So do you think that was kind of the Trojan horse to make them into a cute field mouse and a cute looking crow?
Actually, I think you're really onto something there, because I'm going to bring it back to this, and I'm working on the paper about this, but this is also kind of, again, the beginning of that satanic panic, of parents being worried about what their kids are watching, and not worried enough to like watch the thing with them, but just worried that, oh, these corporations are shoving this stuff down our kids' throats, and this is bad. And obviously it has something to do with the occult because it's so dark, or Satanism because it's so dark. And this is a very dark movie,
sorcery in it and all that. Even that, people were like, "Oh God, if it has spells in it, it must be the devil horns."
Yeah. And so, like, if this was people, I don't think that this movie would have gotten near the notoriety that it did, for sure. It ended up doing 14 million in the box office, which, I mean, after costing 6.1 million to make isn't super, but again, we saw that it went up against some pretty stacked competition. And it had one direct-to-video sequel, The Secret of NIMH 2, Timmy to the Rescue, which apparently was terrible.
That just sounds terrible.
Yeah, when Timmy is in the title, like, I don't know.
It's not South Park, right?
And so one thing to note is that there's only one movie that Don Bluth had a hand in the sequel. So there are lots of movies of his that had sequels, but he did not have anything to do with them. So this one, Don Bluth did not have anything to do with. Neither did basically anybody on the production. So yeah, we could just kind of go past it.
Yeah. If I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing that the sequel would be The Great Bartok, right?
Yes, that's the one
that he had a hand in.
Yes. So the next one that we're gonna go through. Oh, so quick hits for history. Don Bluth Productions files for bankruptcy in 1982. They go into Bluth Group. They do the animation for Dragon's Lair and Dragon's Lair 2, which is a popular arcade game. But then the arcade crash happened in around 1983. So Bluth Group filed for bankruptcy, and he met Morris Sullivan in 1983 and formed Sullivan Blue Studios, which is kind of basically the main configuration of Don Bluth's work, pretty much until he hits Fox Animation. So the next movie is a pretty good one, I think, and it's one that I know that you hold pretty dearly. Man, I had it set up so it'd go straight into the trailer. That would have been sweet. Apparently we're going to watch an ad. It's American Tale.
Right.
So this is when he met up with Steven Spielberg and basically kind of struck up a little deal with him and made a few movies with Steven Spielberg. Like, how cool is that?
And I could say this because I am of the chosen people. You are not, Kody. I mean, if you need a good Jewish picture, Steven Spielberg is the way to go. And what a person to kind of tap it and to get moved to want to do this project, because, you know, at the time, I think Spielberg was just coming off E.T., like you said, the year before. E.T. came out when Dark Crystal or Secret of NIMH came out, right?
So that was, let's see here. That was in 1982. Okay. And American Tale was released, let's see here, 1986.
Okay. So it was a little bit, but, you know, Spielberg was still firing on all cylinders in the 80s. I mean, he hasn't really stopped. But it's, this film, if I could pick any animated film, probably above Disney movies, above, you know, any Pixar films, this is probably like the most like personal like cartoon that played in our house over and over and over again. Yes, it was because of our Jewish upbringing, and my sisters are in the chat, they could attest to this, but it was also our mother was she used to love to sing, you know, she was okay. She did pretty well as far as her vocal abilities were, but you know, it would be kind of grating after a while because she would, and I just have memories of her constantly when this movie wasn't on, she would be singing Somewhere Out There over and over and over again. And it's just, this movie was hard to rewatch because of a lot of like those nostalgic heartstrings. But it like any semblance of sorrow that I felt watching this masterpiece again was watching it with my two littlest girls, and the whole day they were singing, you know, Never Say Never, and it just like broke my heart in the best possible way ever. And it was just, this movie is so generational. And I'm sorry, you're like, you know, I'm gonna steal a Kody phrase here. You're gonna have to drag me off the mic. But it's, I mean, it's not every day you get to talk about and review critically an American Tale, and it's just they hit everything perfectly. This movie also was absolutely terrifying. The cats were just ferocious. They were monsters. They nailed the voice cast was just nailed perfectly, and the animation of this one, just the beautiful matte paintings and the foreground of this film, it's just stunning, and it just holds up. It just holds up to this day. If it could entertain me this movie came out when I was 3 years old, and it can entertain my now 5-year-old in like she's a tough customer. She was engrossed in this film. That's saying everything that you need to say about Don Bluth. All right, sorry.
Yeah. Let me play the commercial or the trailer here real quick.
This holiday season, Universal Pictures brings you a very special motion picture experience. The first animated feature film presented by Steven Spielberg. An American Tale. The story of one family's journey to America and Fievel, their son, who got lost along the way.
Fievel!
An American Tale, a Don Bluth film, coming this Thanksgiving.
Papa!
Yeah, like that's just an evocative trailer. I mean, like obviously you can watch all these on YouTube. That's where I'm pulling all this. But it's so of the time, you know, like in a world, you know, like very you know, commercial, but at the same time it's very evocative. It tells you exactly what's happening, you know. This kid gets lost, and like that's something that, you know, as a kid, you know, especially a little kid, you're afraid of constantly. You know, like you like going to the supermarket and your mom walking around the corner. Like as a little kid, as an 8-year-old, you know, as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, when I saw this, like I was afraid of getting lost. And this kind of, it makes you feel for Fievel in that way because it's just directed at you, like so laser focused like that.
Well, and it's about mice, you know, wrongly thinking there is no, you know, their biggest predators being cats. That there's none of that in the promised land, and it's the Trojan horse, because it's actually very telling of what they were going through. You know, that's this Jewish immigrated family. Immigrated, is that a word?
Yeah, right. Immigrated.
Yeah, immigrated, yeah, that's a word. Moving away from a very hostile environment and kind of coming over on the boat and just having their name change, and it's one of the most heartbreaking things watching this again is when the Mousekowitzes are at they're at Ellis Island and they're switching their names, and they're like, the thing that is most upsetting at that point is Fievel's sister being like, why do they got to change our last name when she just lost her brother? But it was just so telling that was kind of the norm, that, you know, not just these characters in this film, but people going through similar things that have immigrated over, lost, you know, their sons, their mothers, their grandmothers, their daughters. And it was just like Papa Mousekowitz just kind of, he was very sad, but he almost was just like, hey, this is just what happens to us, you know, what we have to deal with, what we have to overcome, and just kind of get over it. And that it's heartbreaking, but, you know, and of course it makes the ending that much sweeter too. So.
Well, yeah, and in any family, when that sort of thing happens, you know, somebody has to be the one to hold things together.
Sure.
And in this movie, it's Papa Mousekowitz, but, you know, like it happens all the time. You know, single moms have to have to keep their kids, you know, spirits up. They have to, you know, single families, like it's something that a kid would deal with in their lifetime, realistically. And so I just think it's really good because it hit its target audience while being like, you know, I mean, it won a Grammy for its song Somewhere Out There. You know, it's good enough on the surface for an adult to watch it. And like, you're not going to feel like it's talking down to you. But for a kid, it touches at your emotions where you feel vulnerable, being lost, not being with your family. And I mean, also as a parent, like losing your kids, we're both parents. And I know that we have several parents in the chat here. It's like, I would hate to lose one of my kids. It'd be heartbreaking for sure.
This movie does play off, you know, actual like huge fears, but it's not all just doom and gloom or just kind of sorrow filled, you know, kind of, it does at times feel a little Oscar baity, I guess, that you would use that term nowadays, because of the score and because of all those kind of emotional notes that it hits. But it is quite funny once Tiger is introduced. Dom DeLuise, he is just a riot, and he steals every scene. He's on the screen. He steals every moment, and he is just fantastic. Again, as Jeremy, he's great, but I really feel like the role of Tiger is really his like iconic Don Bluth role.
I mean, he sounds like he looks.
Yes.
Like he looks like he should be Tiger, and
he kind of did look like that too.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things where, like, you know, he was needed comic relief. And not to say that every movie has to have comic relief, but basically, like you said, he stole every part that he was in.
Yeah, every scene.
He was falling into things, he was falling into barrels and breaking them and falling off. He was a cartoon character. He's this clown.
He was slapstick, but not overly slapstick. He didn't make a farce of the material that was happening around him. But would you say that this is the most? I think, in my opinion, this is the most quotable of Don Bluth's films. Like, release the secret weapon. I was saying that constantly. I still say that sometimes, especially when I play, Magic the Gathering, which a thing or two about as well. I have been known to drop a bomb in limited. No one knows what I'm talking about that doesn't play Magic. But yeah, I have done it before. I'd slam that, bomb rare and release the secret weapon. It's just the best feeling in the world.
Well, so, I mean, obviously I have a different favorite, and we'll talk about it when I get there. But it is an amazing film. And so this one was released the 21st of November, 1986. It had a budget of $6.5 million. Sound familiar?
Right.
But it grossed in the box office $85 million worldwide. So this was like the one. I mean, Steven Spielberg, I'm sure, helped.
Sure.
And it was released against the Great Mouse Detective from Disney. So, which
I really liked. A lot of people shit on that movie, but that's kind of one of my guilty favorites as far as Disney films go.
I would say it's not on the level of like Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Robin Hood, but it is good for sure. It's definitely underrated. So it had one theatrical follow-up, An American Tale, Fievel Goes West, which I had that one on VHS, and I love that. I love the movie. I know it's not Don Bluth, but it's still a good movie. Still had Dom DeLuise as Tiger, thank goodness. And Tiger is the same character. He's falling over things. He's falling. There's a scene in Fievel Goes West where he's being dragged behind a stagecoach, and he's bouncing, and it's making squeak toy noises. So like that's just great. It had a TV show and 2 direct-to-TV sequels. The Treasure of Manhattan Island, which breaks the continuity because he moved west, right?
Sure.
Back in New York somehow. And then The Mystery of the Night Monster in 2000.
I at the time, I will agree with you. I did like Fievel Goes West, but besides that, it was just all schlock and crap. Yeah, and Becky said in the chat, the late great Madeline Kahn. She was just, I mean, the voices in this were just spot on.
Yeah. All right. So, anything else to say about American Tale before we move on?
Let's move on.
All right. So, actually, that clip will not work anymore. So the next one is The Land Before Time, which is kind of towards the top for me for Don Bluth films. This was by Sullivan Bluth Amblimation, which Amblimation is was kind of Universal's animation branch.
It was Spielberg too, right? It was owned by Spielberg.
So this one kind of had some interesting development hiccups. So basically, Universal told Bluth that they couldn't start working on Land Before Time until after An American Tale was released in 1986, but they wanted Land Before Time to be out in 1987. So this was pushed back because Sullivan Bluth Studios was actually moving to Ireland to take advantage of some tax breaks that the Irish government was offering. So they got it pushed back. It was late till 1988. And this is a fantastic movie. It's about a family of brontosaurs, long necks.
You got it.
They're basically on a long journey to find the Great Valley, which is like a paradise on Earth because of they don't really even say why. Like you see like lots of like barren wastelands, but they don't say why. And that's it. His mom dies because of a sharp tooth or a T-Rex. And basically he meets a ragtag group of dinosaurs and they find their way to the Great Valley.
And they're all like, well, I guess they're not orphans because I guess they all kind of meet up with their family. Spoiler alert for a movie that's like 30 years old.
Yeah.
They do all kind of meet up with their family in the end. I think Littlefoot is the only one that kind of meets up with his grandparents there in the valley. But again, matte painting. I mean, this was probably the most stunning looking of all the films. Yes, Secret of NIMH and American Tale, like I said, is very great. It looks fantastic. But this was so atmospheric, and it had a lot of. It had cuts. This film had cutscenes, right? Like you would have this the dinosaurs kind of doing their thing, our main characters, these baby dinosaurs, but then it would kind of cut away and it would show what was going on. It was like the great tectonic events happening. It was giant earthquakes, it was mountains being ripped apart, and you would get all these, which it was a very show don't tell, and which I respect the shit out of Don Bluth for doing that, even back in the day, where he respected his audience, which were children. He respected them enough to show not tell, where cartoons is just all the dialogue and explaining everything to death. So in fairness, to come across to a young child, but Bluth did it in a way where he made these very brutal, violent scenes happen, and then it would kind of progress the story without you even really knowing it. It was almost like a peripheral, but I got it. I think he did it so well that I knew exactly what was happening. I knew this world was dying. This world was changing. It was evolving past the denizens that were occupying the space. And he just did it in a beautiful way. And I mean, it's just another masterful thing that we could say.
Well, so two things to actually speak to what you're talking about. So the main things that you said, like you said, they would go to areas where there just wasn't talking. And that's really hard to do for a kid's cartoon. But so there's actually two reasons why that happened. So number one, during that time, like I said, they weren't allowed to work on it until after An American Tale came out. So what he did was Don had the animators just do dinosaur scenes. And he's like, just animate dinosaur scenes. Right. And so that's kind of why there's just long expanses of just especially the long intro of just dinosaurs walking. And like, there's no explanation for why they're walking. I mean, you eventually get it, but sure. At the beginning, it's just like, oh, these are just dinosaurs, and they're walking all in the same direction.
But they tied it together so perfectly. Like you would think that that's what they were meant to do, not just passing the time.
Yeah, and so it did work out, and the scenes are great. They're well animated and beautiful. But the other thing was that it was kind of beginning to, or it was pulling a lot from Fantasia, the Rites of Spring scene, where there's a Stegosaurus fighting a Tyrannosaurus, and it's just no talking. And so that was also something that he said that kind of was evocative of this, just like, hey, look, this is something that we could have some quiet scenes and just push the story forward without having to say anything. But I just pulled up the trailer, so let's give it a
popular animated films of all time. A film Newsday calls a beautiful lyric odyssey. A movie the Dallas Times Herald labeled a warm family film that's long on charm and excitement. An experience the Chicago Tribune declared has the emotional force of a classic.
Mother, where are you?
It's an incredible adventure.
You want to go with me? Yeah!
Filled with wonder and danger.
I hope he doesn't eat any of you. Quick, this way!
But yeah, so it's just a lot of scenes of the dinosaurs kind of jumping around and doing all sorts of stuff. Lava, jumping from rock to rock to not get sucked into the lava, that sort of thing. And again, beautiful animation. It was released in theaters the 18th of November, 1988. It was released against Oliver and Company in the theaters.
Wah, wah.
Also a great movie.
Nah, I'm not a fan.
It's fine. Like, it's good. I wouldn't not watch it if it was on.
Sure.
So it had a budget of $12.5 million, and it did $84 million in the box office.
Jeez. And before we move on, of course, and I swear to God, I was just about to bring this up, and I saw Eric Williamson in the chat kind of beat me to it. He said, do you remember the Pizza Hut puppets? Absolutely. We had, like, Becky is here as my witness in the chat. we had all of them. You could get Littlefoot, you could get Sarah, you could get Ducky, and it was it Gus. He was the baby Stegosaurus, right? Was it Gus?
It wasn't Gus. It was
man. And Petrie was the pterodactyl. I can never remember. Help us out, chat. But yes, I mean, back in the day, you could go when you could remember. Okay, this is really going back the land before time, or the time before, whatever. Where you could go into a Pizza Hut, if any of you guys are old like me, and you could sit down like a real pizzeria restaurant, but they would give you kind of kids meals. And I remember, I think they did this when The Little Mermaid was released, because we all had matching mugs where you got a coffee mug for every character painted on them. And then when Land Before Time came out, you got these hard plastic. I mean, they were just so horribly made. They look like dog chew toys, but they were amazing. And I bet they're worth $1 million now. And I wish I still had them. And I still wish I had them in a package. Who doesn't, when you have collector's items that you just kind of destroy because you're a child. But yeah, I remember those. So Eric, yes, I swear to God, I was just about to say that, but you beat me to the punch. Do you remember those, Kody? Or I know you're a bit younger.
I do remember the pizzerias for sure. But my family was a Shakey's family, not
look at you.
So if we went to a pizzeria, we were going to Shakey's, not to sit down Pizza Hut. But
how about Round Table?
Yeah, Round Table was also up there for sure. So the Spike Tail's name was Spike.
Oh, thank you. Yes.
And also, I forgot to bring this up at the beginning, but the food in all of Don Bluth's movies looks fucking delicious.
Once we get to All Dogs Go to Heaven, right?
Oh, well, so this started here for me, because when Spike eats all the leaves, like, those leaves look delicious. I wanted to eat those leaves. He's eating them and they're like folding into his mouth, and it just looks so like, and then he falls asleep. Like, he's so satisfied. And it's like, oh geez, like those leaves look so delicious.
He was trying to get kids to eat salad, and I bought it, man. It was good.
Last thing, so there was one TV show that followed this up. It had 26 episodes in 2007. It was just called The Land Before Time. I can't imagine that it did well because there was only one season. There have been 13 straight-to-home video sequels.
Oh, God. None of them good.
From 1994 until 2016 was the most recent one. I will not even try to name them all because that's dumb. And the scene I had pulled up was the scene right after Littlefoot's mom dies, and it's the little pterodactyls playing with the cherry. And they're all like chasing each other. Again, the cherry looks so delicious. Like, it's like a cartoon, cherry. Beautiful.
Sure. And if you think that Don Bluth can make household cats look terrifying, I mean, I probably lost sleep over Sharptooth, because Sharptooth was just crazy looking. And he had, I think all of Don Bluth's like character villains have like a little signifier too, like Dragon. The cat from Secret of NIMH had the kind of jacked up eye. Sharptooth definitely had the big scar. But yeah, I mean, Sharptooth was just terrifying, and he makes like brainless like Cuisinarts out of his villains, and they're just all so crazy looking.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good villain. All silent, just roars and just terrifying. So how about moving on to the next one, which is another great one.
Let's do it.
All Dogs Go to Heaven. I got a great clip for you. This is when Charlie and let's see here. I forgot what the girl's name was. What was the girl's name? I have her down here somewhere.
Anna. I'm usually a lot better at movie trivia than I am tonight.
I believe it's Anna, but here is Anna, Judith Barcy. So this is them delivering the pizza to the orphan dogs.
It's his evil deed.
Oh, to preface this, the dogs are doing something that I didn't think would ever happen again, but then we're doing it now, is they're sitting around the radio listening to people talk. Came around, we were like, we're never doing that again, but then here we are sitting around our computers listening to us talk.
God, my laugh sounds like that guy.
Phantom does.
These are some of the poorest People I know, they're broker than the Ten Commandments. Little joke. Very little. Hey! Anybody here order a pizza?
Charlie! Pizza!
Yeah, so then the puppies attack Charlie, who has a stack of pizzas on his head, and the pizzas fall out, and the dogs are just like rolling in the cheese and eating the pizza, and it looks so good. Like, I've never seen pizza that I wanted to eat more than the pizza in All Dogs Go to Heaven.
If you can make pizza already delicious, already a delicious food, that much more appetizing, you're doing something right. And yes, I think we had to like eat pizza every time we watched this film because it just puts you in the mood. This was another film though that dealt with a very heady theme of loss. Like the vocabulary in Don Bluth films is a lot different from the vocabulary of Disney films and any other type of animation studio of the time. And thinking back to An American Tale, you saw Madeline Kahn, her character, come on the screen, and she goes, "These cats are killing everybody." You get introduced to her with a mouse that just lost his life, and this is, played in a way where this mouse looks like a person. It's wearing suspenders, it's got a little hat on, and he's got the little, flowers that he's holding. If you remember back in those times, they would in childhood, in children's movies and TV shows, they would not say kill. They would say, the bad guy would come on screen and say, "I'll destroy you," or "I'm going to end you now." But no, Don Bluth films would say kill, murder, and then they would deal with real consequences, real stakes in these films. Obviously, we talked about the other ones, and a major one with Littlefoot's mother passing away. And then in this film, our POV character of Charlie, he gets offed, and that is, it's heartbreaking. But they do it. He does it in such a masterful way that it's just so goddamn entertaining.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, like you said, Charlie gets hit by a car and he goes to heaven, which is like something that, a lot of people struggle to talk to their kids about. That's such a weird idea. And I mean, this isn't like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles where there just happens to be a chandelier and they just like hit the chandelier, the chain holding the chandelier, and it mysteriously falls on them. It's like
perfectly. Yeah.
Like Carface shoots a gun in this movie, like an actual gun. And so like this is definitely something where it's dark and it has to deal with death and stealing. Charlie is a con artist, played by Burt Reynolds.
The late great Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, the late great Burt Reynolds, rest in peace. Dom DeLuise as Itchy, again another role that is very well fits him, I think.
Absolutely.
Vic Tayback as Carface and Charles Nelson Riley as Killer. This film had a budget of $13.8 million, had a theatrical release in November 1989, November 17th, and it didn't do so well because it went up against The Little Mermaid.
Sure, yeah, I can see that.
So it did $27 million in the box office, but it had a record. It sold over 3 million VHS copies in its first month. I think it's one of the highest selling VHSs.
It didn't outgross Oliver and Company either, right?
I don't have that figure in front of me, so I don't want to stamp it, but I wouldn't put it behind it. Like it is a great movie, and basically it saw its success not in the theater, but at home. Where kids would be ordering, you'd be ordering Pizza Hut and sitting on the floor on the carpet, watching it on your 27-inch TV and drinking Pepsi, like
playing with your stupid Land Before Time dog toys. Yeah.
I mean, do you have anything? So one other thing, Judith Barcy, who did the voice of Anna, also did the voice of Ducky in Land Before Time. This was her last film. She actually had a very sad end. Her father was an alcoholic and basically always threatened to hurt her and hurt his mom, or her mom. And so he actually killed both of them and committed suicide, like just freak accident. She was in a lot of TV stuff too. But yeah, so rest in peace to Judith Barcy as well as Burt Reynolds, because that was just, you know, she was a great actress. Just just sad.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else to say about All Dogs Go to Heaven? I don't know.
Right. I just think, like, I echo you and I echo the chat, just saying that I think this film was all about the voice cast. I just think it kind of, maybe this was the point where Don Bluth, just coming off of that amazing wave he was writing, is just like, I could do no wrong. I'm going to spit in the face of a double Disney year in Oliver and Company and The Little Mermaid. And it looks like this might have been his one kind of reality slap, so to speak. But yeah, fantastic film. I think this is probably has one of the most cult followings because it didn't do so well in the theaters. But another one I think that has a giant cult following is one of your favorites, which I think we're going to get to shortly.
Yeah, so real quick, it also had All Dogs Go to Heaven 2. Again, Don Bluth had nothing to do with it. And they also had an All Dogs Go to Heaven rendition of A Christmas Carol, which I don't know how that got made. That sounds terrible.
Good Lord.
It sounds terrible.
Was Charlie just the ghost of everything? The ghost of past, present, and future?
I did not have the slightest interest to look into it.
No, God.
Beyond the fact that it exists. Like, believe me, All Dogs Go to Heaven is fine in of itself. And it doesn't need a sequel. It's fine. Just leave it alone.
The dog died. What do you want?
Yeah. Dog dies. So the next one is my favorite of all these movies, and it's just one that I had on VHS and I watched all the time. And I kind of so my dad, my mom and my dad divorced when I was really young, but my dad played in bands and was like played guitar and sang, and so like that I kind of have this connection with Chanticleer. Where it's kind of like you see this person that's like larger than life to you, as like a little kid. Edmund is a little kid who's turned into a cat, and he's looking for Chanticleer, who's this king of rock. And so like that was kind of like my dad was like a rock and roller. He played in bands and stuff, and so that's kind of my connection to it. This was done by Sullivan Blue Studios, independent of Universal, so no more Spielberg attachment there. And so it tells the story of Chanticleer, which is actually a Canterbury Tale. And it's basically about a rooster that crows to make the sun rise. And there's a pack of owls that makes it so that he doesn't crow, so the sun doesn't come up, and he gets humiliated and goes to work in the city. Rain comes down, floods everything, and they go to find Chanticleer and bring him back. I have a clip here because again, this is such a great movie. I think it's definitely not like the best movie, but so this is the beginning. So right when Patu, who's the narrator and a dog who wears shoes, it's great. So he rescues Edmund from the main villain, which I did not.
I want to say it's voiced by Paul Newman as well. Am I wrong about that? No. I know he's voiced by the same guy that does Baloo.
No, yeah. So Patu, we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
But so
Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Patu saving Edmund from the Duke.
The Duke of Owls.
Right, the owls hit the light.
And the light, he turns on a flashlight and shoots the owl out of the room.
Hey, boy. We were this close. Oh, that flashlight biz was quick thinking on your part. What's your name, little fella?
Edmund. Is he gone?
Yeah, he's gone, but he'll be back, and he won't be alone, the coward. I would have whopped him if I'd have had my shoes tied. But you know something? Tying shoes is harder than dry dog food.
What you wearing shoes for?
Bunions.
I just like I just like that Patu is a dog that has bunions, and he wears hard-soled shoes because of his bunions, and he
can never get those goddamn laces tied though.
Yeah. Again, it's harder than dry dog food. So it's just like, you know, they go to find Chanticleer. He's in basically a version of Las Vegas, and he's kind of like Vegas Elvis impersonator. You know, dyes his hair black and basically just sings for money. This was released on April 3rd, 1992, and had Glenn Campbell as Chanticleer, Phil Harris as Petu, who this was his actual last movie. He did Baloo in Jungle Book, Thomas O'Malley in
Aristocats,
and Little John in Robin Hood, and he died 4 years after this movie came out. So rest in peace. This movie grossed had a budget of 18 million and a box office total box office of 11.5 million. So did not do well, and it was released against Fern Gully. So I mean, Fern Gully wasn't super high on my radar, but it was definitely, you know,
yeah.
It was Fern Gully. So my only other note before we move on, I don't know how much more you have to say about Rock-a-Doodle, is Gold. Like, if you weren't a furry before this movie, Goldie, like I remember rewatching it and saying, I hope this doesn't awaken something in me.
She's pretty. She's pretty pretty.
She's a little too sexy for a bird. And there's a scene where she's like pouring, I guess, milk. It's like a white into his mouth, and just like singing and like stroking his I don't know what the thing on top of a rooster's head is called.
Coxcomb?
Yeah, just like stroking it.
Yeah.
And just pouring this white liquid into his mouth. I'm hoping milk. But who knows?
Maybe.
Yeah. And let's see here. Yeah, so there was a little bit more financial trouble, and Bluth had to reorganize into Bluth Sullivan Entertainment. So the rest of the movies going forward are Bluth Sullivan Entertainment.
I don't remember it as fondly as you did. You've kind of sold me on it to where I kind of like it a little bit more because of how just kind of the personal connection, and I could kind of understand that for someone that was kind of in that situation. So I kind of like it a little bit more now. This movie to me was just a bit. It was so loud. It's more madcap than any of the other films that came before it. It's a bit more slapstick. You have that little nephew owl that's just like running around on, like, you know, ecstasy, not knowing what the hell is going on, repeating the same thing, trying to stab everyone. It's a little bit disjointed.
Charles Nelson Riley played that owl.
Yeah. The voices were cool. You know, the Duke of Owls opens his mouth and turns people into cats with his Lucky Charms breath. I mean, right? It's a lot to unpack with Rock-a-Doodle, but I think this was the first one where they integrated animation to real life, right? Because the role of Edmund, you know, he is played by a little child, and you get to see a human child, and you get to see his family, and they're not animated, and then they kind of become that way, which I'm a sucker for that kind of thing. I love the Mary Poppins, the Bedknob and Broomsticks. I love when they kind of mix and match those kind of real life and the animation, especially back then when it was just so masterfully done, because you knew the actors really had to act against something, and it wasn't just all green screen. So no, I don't hold it into as hollowed esteem as you, but it wasn't a bad movie by any means.
Well, yeah, and it obviously didn't do quite as good as some other movies that Don Bluth has done. It definitely has its place, and again, part of it's just my personal connection to it.
Sure.
So I wouldn't begrudge somebody not liking it. It's just my personal connection. This was also kind of a few years after Who Framed Roger Rabbit, so that was kind of popular of doing animation with live action. And we're going to talk about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's one of my favorite movies. It's so good.
That's a whole podcast.
Yeah, we'll that'll just be one episode sometime in the future, I'm sure. All right, so you ready to move on to Thumbelina? All right, I've got the trailer pulled up.
Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, She's a funny little squirt.
A very small girl, no bigger than a thumb.
I wish I were big. Don't ever wish to be anything but what you are.
Had an impossible dream of finding her one true love.
Let me be your only
We'll
love.
live happily ever after.
But before her fairy prince could claim her heart,
She's gonna marry the fairy prince.
Well, perhaps.
That's basically the whole story. So Thumbelina gets picked up by this fairy prince, and she's gonna get married to him, or is she? And it's basically just like a series of villains that steal her away to marry her, and that's the whole movie.
I did something a little different for Thumbelina. I wrote a review down watching this through adult eyes.
Okay.
And this is like, think about this as a complete pessimist or whatever you want to call me, but really talk about adult themes. Holy shit, Thumbelina. Okay, here it goes. Thumbelina through adult eyes. Elderly woman spinster finally gets a child that is actually already a woman who is already trying to get married and leave, who gets kidnapped by a large-chested frog who pimps her out to her abusive son, which just wants her money. But Thumbelina is in love with the entitled 16-year-old fairy whom she met 5 minutes in the middle of the night. He snuck into her window, then meets a beetle sex pervert that won't stop physically assaulting her, played by Gilbert Gottfried, probably the most telling role about Gilbert Gottfried. All the while, she just wants to go home while frogs, fairies, and bugs are just trying to exploit her for money, fame, and sex. She even finds herself saved by a Madam Field Mouse who attempts to sell her off to marry a mole. In the end, the old lady spinster loses her daughter that she just had, for a couple days to marriage, and then she just basically dies alone. Wow, this movie is a little bleak. It's just, like you said, it's just villain to villain. But it's just this little girl that gets born out of a flower, and all she has to deal is she just gets talked into everything because she starts drinking the Kool-Aid in every situation because she's just so naive because she just was birthed, and everyone's just trying to poke Thumbelina with their dick, and it's just crazy.
It's hashtag Me Too the movie.
Yes. Oh my God. Right. This was it's the creepiest. This is the Louis C.K. of Don Bluth films. Oh man.
Well, to be fair, it's not his original story. It's I believe a Hans Christian Andersen story initially. So, I mean, so this was also kind of part of a time where their studio was kind of getting bailed out by the British government, and so like they were given money, and they're like, please just make something, So, and so this one was rushed first. So there's 3 movies we're about to dive into. This one was rushed first because it looked like it would make the most money of the 3, and we're about to get into some bad movies.
but real quick, animation was spot on this. This was great. This was I think this was the first Barry Manilow. The score was all Barry Manilow, and the soundtrack was fantastic. But yes, my sister Becky, who is in the chat, played the fuck out of this movie, man. We even got this stupid little parakeet, and she named it Cornelius. I was over Thumbelina, but I mean, watching it through adult eyes, man, this was just kind of creepy.
I will say I have a female cousin that is 10 days younger than me who is really into Thumbelina. And I was like, Thumbelina, that's about princesses. I'm a man. I'm into Joes and skateboards. And so like I admittedly did not give Thumbelina the light of day at first, but it's a beautifully animated film. That frog again is a little busty for my taste, but
so Goldie's okay, you creep, but if it's a frog, I see what's going on.
Okay, there wasn't as much cleavage. If the line is there, it's too much.
Hey, it's Charo though. I mean, they did Charo. If Charo was a frog or a toad, they spot on. You got it.
Yeah. But anyway, so this one was released the 30th of March, 1994. Had a budget of $28 million and made $11.5 million. Wah, wah. And it was kind of not very well critically received. People basically said, this is only for kids. You'll be hard pressed to find an adult who likes it. Obviously, that was when it came out. So, now I'm sure there's adults that would watch it. But yeah. And again, this is where I'm kind of starting to run out of things to find. Not as much as documented about these films. So sorry.
No, for sure.
So we're going to go into the next one, unless you have anything else to say. If you have a copy of the CD, hold on to it. It is incredibly rare and incredibly expensive. You're going to get at least $100 or $150 for it.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Again, I think this was, like I said, this had actual. Well, Thumbelina was an actual person. The animation on her and the mom and everything, absolutely flawless. It looked like they were live action actors, but with a hand-drawn animated overlay. And again, like we mentioned, they had this was the first time I think he dipped into the whole CG aspect with that kind of establishing shot in the beginning. But yeah, let's kind of run through the last three because I don't have much. Spoiler alert! I don't have much good to say about those.
Okay. Last thing. Thumbelina was voiced by Jodie Benson, who also voiced Ariel and Barbie in Toy Story, and also had Kenneth Mars as King Colbert, who is Inspector Kemp in Young Frankenstein and King Triton in Little Mermaid. Okay. So that's it.
Need a princess voice. Jodie Benson is your girl.
Yeah. Troll in Central Park. We don't even really need to play anything. It stars Tom DeLuise as Stanley. So A Troll in Central Park came out the 23rd of December, 1994. I couldn't find its budget, but it only made $71,000.
Oh my God.
It has a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is bad.
It's awful.
So let me give you the plot, and not unlike John, I didn't write it down, but here's my plot. A Troll in Central Park is about a troll named Stanley who likes flowers when trolls don't like flowers. So the queen sends him to someplace where nothing grows. Central Park? And he meets a little boy and a baby girl, and they have fun together and grow plants. Sorry.
I love the voice.
Yeah. And can you close the door? Then I won't make so much noise.
You're getting really excited.
Sorry. I know.
You're getting animated talking about animation.
But then the queen finds out that Stanley is growing plants in Central Park where he shouldn't be able to grow plants, and she gets mad and turns Stanley into stone with her thumb. And then basically, through magic of friendship, Stanley turns back to a normal thing, and then they climb aboard a boat made out of plants and fly away. It's a dumb movie. Like the plot is paper thin. I don't know.
It's dog shit. I mean, let's just call it.
It's free on YouTube. You can just watch it on YouTube. Don't
Rock-a-Doodle. Go watch and so is Thumbelina. Go watch those instead.
Yeah. Rock-a-Doodle, Thumbelina, Troll in Central Park. I watched it so that John wouldn't have to.
I did watch it and I fell asleep.
Yeah, well, that's the proper response.
I watched this film after. Oh, I watched it when I was younger, but I just rewatched it minutes after getting teeth removed the other day. So I was already in a funny space, and this movie pissed me off so bad that I just turned it off and rolled over and went to bed. So.
All right. Yeah. So the next one, again, is another one that we can kind of push through real quick. Yeah. This is Don Bluth Limited. Again, went through bankruptcy, restarted, and also kind of in the process of moving back to America. So this is The Pebble and the Penguin. So the story of this is Martin Short plays Hubie, a lovable doofus penguin who wants to marry Marin, who's played by Annie Golden. And there's a really big penguin named Drake, played by Tim Curry, who wants to marry her instead. So he knocks Hubie off the glacier. He gets picked up by a fishing ship, and they have an adventure to get her back. But for some reason, he has to give her some sort of stone before this festival is over, and that's it. That's the movie. It was badly animated. I mean, a lot of the animation was outsourced to a Belgian studio, and there's actually a remastered version where Don and his associates went back and redid the animation so it wouldn't look bad. and Martin Short, I always feel bad for Martin Short. Like, he's such a good actor, but he's always in bad movies.
Well, Tim Curry too, right? Tim Curry will show up to anything that you ask him to be in.
So like Martin Short is also just great. If you watch him on any interview, he's just amicable. He's very kind, just super nice guy, very funny, but just in bad movies all the time. He's in Santa Claus 3 Jack Frost movie. Like, it's like he's such a good actor.
He's trying too. I had to watch those garbage fires because I have a million children, and
yeah,
he definitely is trying in that as Jack Frost, and I didn't hate the moments he's in there. Hated the rest of that. Oh God, I hate that film. But yes.
So Pebble and the Penguin was released April 11th, 1995. Had a budget of $28 million, made $4 million.
Oh. This was not one that this was the one that I did not see. That I
did
made
not
the
go back to read.
choice.
I had to pay to watch this one, so I wasn't going to do that. So we're going to move on to one that actually matters. So we're in the home stretch. This is the last two, I promise. So this one is actually a fairly well remembered one by Don Bluth Limited and Fox Animation, and I'll let the trailer say what it is.
An enchanted world.
The Tsar of Imperial Russia.
A sorcerer's curse.
I will not rest until I see the end of the Romanov line forever!
A young princess.
Anastasia! Grandma!
Who vanished without a trace.
And Anastasia. Anastasia, it's such a good movie. Done by Fox Animation, has such a great voice cast. So well animated. Like, this could easily outseat a lot of Disney movies.
This was a complete return to form, right? I mean, this film was just breathtaking. It was incredible, animated perfectly, funny, high stakes again. This was a Don Bluth film because, you know, that was kind of a stretch of just like, oh my God, what are we doing here? And then this film came out. It had a memorable villain like Rasputin is just equal part. He's probably one of my favorite fleshed out villains as far as a Don Bluth villain goes, because like I said before, usually they're just Cuisinarts with a maniacal agenda. Rasputin is calculated. But he's so funny too, and he's falling apart through the entire thing, and you pair him up with Bartok, and they're just like this Laurel and Hardy bit, and it just works perfectly. This movie is as near perfect as it comes.
Yeah, so I mean, this had a star-studded cast: Andrea Martin, Kelsey Grammer, Hank Azaria played Bartok, Christopher Lloyd as Rasputin, Meg Ryan as Anastasia. Actually, funny story about getting Meg Ryan to play Anastasia. She was kind of on the fence about it, and so what they did was they animated an episode of Sleepless in Seattle with her voice, or a section of it, and she was so impressed with it that she just decided that, oh yeah, I want to do this. I'm like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
This movie follows it's a sort of true, I mean, it's a true story, what happened in Anastasia, but this is kind of like a fanciful retelling of the murder of the Russian oligarchy, basically. And in real life, no Anastasia was ever found. It was kind of like a rumor, but in this is kind of just a fairy tale version, obviously, where Anastasia is found and they bring her back and she becomes the queen of Russia, or not the queen, not the Tsar. I don't know what a female Tsar is.
Tsaris? No, I don't know.
Yeah,
and I'm Russian, so now I feel really bad. Way to shame me.
Yeah. So this got a theatrical release in November 21st, 1997, and it made $140 million in the box office. This was also made in CinemaScope, which is something that hasn't been done in a long time, and was composed by David Newman, who he composed The Brave Little Toaster and Ice Age. And what a fun connection is, his father composed the 1956 film Anastasia, starring Ingrid Bergman and Yul Brynner.
Huh.
So there's like a cool little deep connection there.
Nice. Duchess. Becky's screaming Duchess.
Duchess. Okay.
That is correct.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic film. I wish we had more time to talk about Anastasia because it just was. This was a quintessential Don Bluth film. It just played. I don't know. It took its time, for lack of a better term. Like it was just like, it was like a fresh of breath air from seeing all the kind of like, and I understand like money's a thing, right? So not everything could be Secret of NIMH or Anastasia or even Thumbelina, but this more than anything was just fits into that upper strata of his films, and it was just a great kind of a change up pitch.
Yeah, this is definitely great. It had the only straight to video sequel that Don Bluth worked on, Bartog's Great Adventure. It only had Kelsey Grammer, Andrea Martin, and Hank Azaria back for their original voices. It went straight to video. Basically, Fox wanted to make it an animated feature, but he told them, no, this was too low budget. You can't make this a video. All right, last one real quick. Titan AE by Fox Animation and Blue Sky Studios, who went on to do things like Ice Age. This had a star-studded cast. It had a budget of $75 million. It was released on the 16th of June 2000, and basically it was a film that was about humanity had ended, and so 15 years after the Earth is blown up, these people are trying to find a way to release the Titan, which is supposed to basically be a new Earth to like save them. So it's very sci-fi. There's CG aliens in it. It's very jarring, to say the least. Like there's a lot of 2D animation mixed in with 3D animation, which I don't think works very well, but it has kind of a cult following. Star-studded cast: Matt Damon as Kale, Drew Barrymore as Akima, Ron Perlman as Professor Sam Tucker, Janine Garofalo as Stith, John Leguizamo as Goon, and Jim Cummings was in the film as well. I forgot to write down who he played. Again, released 16th of June 2000, had a budget of $75 million, but made $36 million. And basically, like the critics were kind of rough on it because it was one of those things where it's a Don Bluth film, so it should be a cartoon, right? But like a lot of people kind of thought, well, this is kind of more for the Star Trek people, right? You know, so it's more for adult man children who don't have anything better to do. But it also kind of had like silly undertones.
Hey, I represent that.
Yeah, no, I don't. We have a podcast about cartoons, so
we're as hipster as they come.
Yeah, we're as useless as they come, for sure.
I said hipster.
Oh, hipster. Oh no.
Yes.
But yeah, and the funniest thing, I actually have it up here. The Titan AE soundtrack was basically late 90s rock soundtrack. Higher by Creed.
Oh no.
It's My Turn to Fly by The Urge. Cosmic Castaway by Electrice.
Wow.
Everything me back. Fun Loving Criminals. Like this is like, if you like late 90s alt rock, the Renegade Survivor by the Wailing Souls. Like this is.
I am slow dancing and having my first French kiss with Ashley Walters right now.
Yeah.
In my head, like, oh my God.
Yeah, this is it has its followers because it's a Don Bluth film, and there's people that like it. It had 2 novels and a Dark Horse comic series that led up to it. It was exclusively distributed by Digital Cinema, so this was never printed on film. And again, late 90s alt rock soundtrack.
This was just the worst. I did not, and I am a sci-fi. I'm the biggest Star Wars nerd. Maybe not so much anymore, but I love the genre, right? I love a good sci-fi. And like you said, the animation just clashed. It didn't work. Like the hand-drawn with it was just like McDonald's style fast food CG. I wanted to like this movie because on paper it's like, yes, this sounds awesome. And coming off of Anastasia, I'm like, you have your credit back. Your credit is good here. And then he shit in my cereal, and I wasn't very happy about it.
And there's some parts where like there's like a console that's 3D and it's glowing, and the way it lights the animation looks really cool. So there has its moments. I'm not saying that it doesn't work completely, but it is definitely something that goes, it's grating more often than it's pleasing.
Well, like you said, it's extremely jarring, especially like when you watch a Don Bluth film, you expect a level of quality. You know, the stupid Penguin movie and the Troll movie excluded because those just didn't happen. But you expect, as far as the animation goes, you expect a standard, and this just didn't. It just looked like kind of visual vomit, and it's just kind of sad because I could see where they were going with it, and I think this movie was made better, you know, a couple years later as Disney's Atlantis, because it was kind of the same themes a little bit, and it had that kind of perfect marriage of hand drawn to CG, and that worked, and it blended perfectly. Or even like a Treasure Planet, which I think is a very underrated film. This was just like fuck since Jump Street, and I just did not appreciate this film at all.
Yeah. So the last thing, Don Bluth is still active. He has seminars and webinars of how to draw. You can find him on Twitter as @Don Bluth and @Don Bluth Studios. He's currently funding through Kickstarter a film about Dragon's Lair, which is the arcade game that they released or that they did the art for. And yeah, so you can find him on Twitter. He hasn't responded to anything I've ever said, but I follow him. He's a great guy, and there's lots of interviews. He's a great interviewer, so just go check that stuff out.
I mean, that is I think a personal goal of this podcast. I mean, if you guys like Don Bluth, if we could get Don Bluth on there, because I will make it my personal goal to get the man on talking to Kody and I. If you guys watch it, I mean, we will make it happen. If you build it, we will come. Ew.
Oh man, no. No, you leave Goldie out of this.
I was just about to say that. Get out of my head, Kody.
No, but honestly, like Don Bluth, you know, he's a great guy. He's busy. He's hardworking. Obviously, you know, you see it in his work. You know, the work that he puts out, you know, is obviously maybe a little dated in its implementation, but it looks beautiful. And there's just no getting around it. There's so many beautiful hand-drawn films that you can tell had their fingerprints of Don Bluth on them. And yeah, he's a great guy, great director, great animator. And yeah, I just can't wait to see how this Dragon's Lair movie pans out.
Oh man. Hey, these are fun, man.
Yeah.
I have to say, this is slowly becoming one of my favorite things that I do. Just talking about animation, these kind of films. If you guys like this, you know, how to grow this thing, you know, eventually it's in the cards to kind of make this an audio show as well, maybe a tape show. But I mean, the interaction from the chat, this would be a hard one to pull away from a live thing, because you know, I could tell that you guys are very passionate about these kind of things. So we might just have to keep this one live. I was thinking about doing an edited version of this, but I mean, I love playing off the people in the chat for this one. But man, yeah, this was episode 2 of YouTOONS. You could find it now. We have its own Twitter handle, Kody.
Yeah, it's @toons_u, and you can find us there. We love talking to you. We'll try to remember to annotate who's talking, because we both talked through it. But yeah, come chat with us. And again, just as John said, I love having this chat because, again, like with the finger puppets, the Land Before Time finger puppets, like John and I are big nerds, like, you know, and we love doing research and reminiscing, but there are things we're going to miss. So having you guys in the chat to bring that stuff up and tell us about things that happen to you and your personal connection, let us know on Twitter which one is your favorite and why. Because, like, you know, like I kind of won over John with Rock-a-Doodle, with why Rock-a-Doodle had a personal connection for me. And the same with American Tale. You know, everybody has connections to art, and these are art for sure. So tell us which one is your favorite and why you like it so much. That'd be great. We'd love to have some conversation going.
Absolutely. Yeah, please talk. I mean, the conversation doesn't stop when the camera turns off tonight. If if you guys want to, you know where to find us. If not on the YouTOONS page or the YouTOONS Twitter account, you know where to find us personally. Not Kody Smith and Wars I've Done, but tell us who you guys want to see covered. I mean, we have a good idea of where we want to take this show, but it's always nice to hear feedback from the audience. What great childhood or even adulthood animated IP do you guys want Kody and I to kind of analyze and discuss? So thank you everyone in the chat. Eric Williamson, always an all-star. Legendary Mana was here. It's just too much to name. Of course, Becky helped us out a lot, but yeah, like I said, find us and follow us on that Twitter page. Yeah, Kody, anything to exit with, sir?
Nope. I mean, I still have my Merfolk podcast, but people that are watching this probably aren't interested in that. So just find me at Not Kody Smith on Twitter. I love talking about cartoons. So just like John loves talking about cartoons. So find us, talk to us. We love chatting about old stuff. So obviously we love it so much we're doing it now. So
absolutely. So we'll see you guys next time.